This time we have the president of the Grainworks Union here, and I don't have a bio for Gerry, but I'll let Gerry tell you a little bit about himself. So with that, let's welcome Gerry.
I wasn't going to mispronounce your last name, no worries. Gerry Gault, president of the Grainworkers Union, Local 333. A little bit about myself. I've worked in the grain industry for the last 32 and a half years. I'm presently on leave as president of the union, but I'm employed by Cascadia Terminal, owned by Viterra Glencore. Like I said, I've been there for 32 years. I've been on the executive of the union for the last 12 years, and I've been president for, this is my 6th year as president. At one time, I know that our union used to come to the prairies, and our business agent would come back and tell us how much we were disliked for all of the labor stoppages and work shortages that were attributed to us. There's some facts that I like to put out when I do these talks, and I've been coming to Andy Schmidt's conference for the last 3 years, I think it's been. The Grainworkers Union has not been on strike since 1974. In our history, which is coming up to 60 years, we've actually had 2 strikes, 1965 and 1974. Any other work stoppage is not attributed to us. We have, for the last few years, we have gotten involved in coming to the prairies more and talking to farmers, because we don't want to be seen as the big bad guys. If your grain does not come to Vancouver or Prince Rupert, we don't have jobs. It's that simple, and we all understand that. So with that, what I'd like to do is just give you a little bit of rundown on all the terminals in Vancouver, starting with Richardson's. It's currently under renovation, has delivered to capacity for the last 4 or 5 years, which is just over 3 million tons. They'd like to increase to 4.5 million tons, and with this last Glencore deal, they got a 25% share of Cascadia Terminal, and they have about a 21% share in Prince Rupert. They work 3 shifts unloading cars. They can unload 300 cars a day. They've had less than 100 cars a day average since January 1st. Storage capacity is 100,000 tons, but becomes, their working capacity is about 75,000. After expansion, they anticipate to have 130,000 tons. Alliance Grain is, I don't know how to do these things, but there we go. Alliance Grain is Parrish and Heimbecker are primary owners, multiple owners. They work on a Monday to Friday schedule, augmented by weekend overtime. They handle to about their capacity right now, about 2.2 million tons a year. Their biggest problem is that they can't handle the big Panamax vessels on high tide. They need to wait till slack tide to finish loading, so that causes delays for them. They're capable of unloading 180 cars a day on 3 shifts. They're averaging about 80 unloads a day since January 1st. They have 102,000 tons of storage space. Current storage is about 55,000 tons. Pacific Elevators, owned by Viterra. At one time, Pacific Elevators was the most efficient elevator on the West Coast. It's one of the oldest, but it was one of the most efficient. Over the years, when Agricor first took over from Alberta Pool, they decided to slow Pacific down because there was an awful lot of money that was needed to be put into it, so they started using it more as a specialty facility, basically canola and peas. In the successive mergers, buyouts, takeovers, shutdowns, however you want to phrase all that, Viterra Glencore owns it today, and they have the same philosophy of mainly canola and peas. They do normally around 2 million tons. They are putting part of their lease agreement. They just signed a lease. I believe it's a 30-year lease. Part of the agreement with the Vancouver Port Authority is that Viterra Glencore had to agree to put in a significant amount of money. We're being told it's close to $140 million in the upgrade of the facility. That work is there's people on site. There's no real evidence that work is being done, but they say they're going to be doing it. They can unload 180 cars a day, operating on 3 shifts. They have an average unload since January 1st of approximately 50 cars a day. Cascadia Terminal is the fastest loading facility in Vancouver. Can ship about 3,200 tons an hour. Normally does about 5 million tons a year. Has the capacity to do 6.5 to 7 million tons. Operates on a continuous schedule, but still augments with varying amounts of overtime. Cargill Grain shipped about 3.2 million tons last year. Has the ability to ship 5.5 to 6 million tons. Has the ability to load 2 ships at the same time. They're in the process of upgrading their basement operations to increase the speed and tonnage. Since Cargill took over that's the old Saskatchewan Wheat Pool terminal, Cargill has never come close to meeting the same numbers that Saskatchewan Wheat Pool, the pool, did as the owners of that facility. They're probably about 60% of what the old SAS Pool was able to do out of that facility. The terminals in the port of, as I said before, we've had no work stoppages at all since 2002, and 2002 was a 4-month lockout by the employers, precipitated on the belief that there was only 7 million tons of grain to ship that year and that Prince Rupert would have been able to handle all of it, so it was a prime time to put the bargaining screws to the union as such, and they locked us out from the end of August until the middle of December of that year. Each terminal is running consistently running at 50% or less of storage this year. There's approximately 45 ships sitting in the port or around the port, Vancouver, waiting to be loaded. It's our opinion that since the loss of the Wheat Board's single desk monopoly, the biggest problem has been in logistics. We have ships that take 3 weeks to a month or longer to finish loading product. We never seen that under the Wheat Board. In the Port of Vancouver, there's 5 terminals that are within, a few miles of each other. There's 3 on the south shore and 2 on the north shore. If a vessel comes in and it's dedicated to Cascadia, it's dedicated to Cascadia. So if it's coming to load 60,000 tons, it will probably come to Cascadia and be kicked back out to anchor at least 3 times, possibly 4 times, in order to finish loading. That never happened under the Wheat Board. What happened under the Wheat Board is that it would load at Cascadia, go to Cargill, go to Richardson's, be in port for maybe 48 to 72 hours, and then it would be gone. We've had ships sitting in that have come into Vancouver. By the time they get here and sit here, they've sat for 65 days. Prince Rupert Grain, quickly, is owned by Cargill, Richardson's, and Viterra, and the Alberta Heritage Fund. It was once treated by the Wheat Board and the companies as an overflow terminal. This facility used to handle around 3 million tons a year, with layoffs expected every year in April or May until September, October. Since September 2002, the terminal has run without layoff or work stoppage. Prince Rupert Grain shipped over 5 million tons and is projecting to do the same this crop year. The terminal has the capacity to ship over 8 million tons without any upgrades needed. It is very underused. There was a plan a few years ago to find a shift schedule that would allow the terminal to process over 7.5 million tons. That plan was stopped by its board of directors. The board of directors at that time said they don't want to ship any more than 5 million tons. As a matter of fact, when they appointed the new president at that time, when they appointed Nick Fox, who's the current president, the first meeting that we had with Nick Fox said, don't plan on shipping any more than 2.5 to 3 million tons out of this facility ever again. They've continued to do 5 million. They have the ability to do 8, and they refuse to do any more. They refuse to put out a third shift shipping or receiving, and they refuse to go to a continuous operation. It's had a record unload of 360 cars in 24 hours. This year is averaging less than 100 cars a day. Again, no labor stoppages on the West Coast. Our members report unloading cars on less than 50% of the unloading shifts available. And at a place like Cascadia, where I work, they have 14 shifts available. They are a continuous operation facility. They have 21 shifts available receiving. They choose to work only 14 of them. Of those 14 that they work, there is absolutely no receiving done on at least 5 of those. There's just no cars. There has been no backlog of cards. One of the things that, I've gotten quite a few phone calls from different farmers that I've met over the last few years asking me why there's such a backlog of cars in Vancouver or Prince George or Prince Rupert. To the best of my knowledge, there has not been any backlog of cars this year. Vancouver waits for cars. Prince Rupert has the ability to store 600 cars at a time in their yard, and they run empty. So this backlog that the railway has been apparently telling you, I don't know where it comes from. Just a couple other facts that was talked about earlier. The Western Producer ran a story in November. The cost of this year of waiting grain ships was $5,000 to $7,000 a day, with some ships waiting 65 days or more to finish loading cargo. The Alberta Wheat Commission puts demurrage charges between $12,000 and $20,000 a day in December, and right now there's close to 50 ships waiting to load in Vancouver. And I was given a note a little while ago about one of the statements that Hunter Harrison apparently made last night in his speech, that he said that CP was not to blame, but the terminals were not unloading cars on holidays or weekends. Let me tell you that I don't know of too many grain workers that turn down weekend work. It's time and a half and double. Holidays are triple. Chances of a grain worker saying no to those days are pretty slim. They haven't been offered. The grain companies has been a practice for probably about 15 years. Every Tuesday, the grain companies put up on the board the availability of some overtime work, whether it's Saturday or Sunday. And to cover their rear ends for the collective agreement purposes, they put up 2 shifts on Saturday and 2 shifts on Sunday. And what has been happening this crop year is that on Friday morning, they cancel at least 50% of those shifts, if not 100% of those shifts. Our crews regularly work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday with no rail cars, and the railway will deliver cars on Thursday saying we want them back by Sunday. The companies would prefer not to work any weekend work, but they have to offer it in order to get the cars out, and those are facts. Our guys have not and do not refuse. All the companies have a continuous schedule available to them in the collective agreement. We have 2 facilities in Vancouver that use them. The rest of the companies have found it to be cost inefficient to run a continuous schedule. They found it to be cost inefficient to run a 6-day schedule. What we have today is the majority of facilities running a Monday to Friday operation, augmenting with weekend overtime, And if you really think that there's a grain worker out there that's going to say no to Saturday and Sunday at time and a half and double to unload cars, you're dreaming. That's my presentation.
Paul said he'd take questions, so are there any questions? It's good to hear something from that side of the operation. Certainly we can understand that side a little better. Yes, sir.
That's me again. You say that the terminal is about working at about 50% of capacity, is that fair?
Yes.
Is there any layoffs?
No, there hasn't been any layoffs yet.
So we're paying, and they would be able to work with the amount of people they have right now, they would be able to work at 100% capacity?
No.
Without adding that?
No.
Okay.
Right now, and this is part of the problem, is that we have enough staff now to handle the volumes that we're handling now. On our down days, that is when we're doing all of our cleanup that would normally be reserved for our overtime work on the weekends. So we're not getting the overtime work on the weekends, we're getting all the cleanup done. The companies have not hired yet. They've all told us that they're going to hire between probably 7 to 14 people. When the railway starts delivering cars, we'll get those numbers. But they haven't done the hiring yet to beef up to handle the supply that's supposed to be on its way.
Okay, so we're not really paying wages to people with...
No, we're not sitting around doing nothing.
Okay.
Yeah, no, we're not sitting around doing nothing. Thank you.
It sounds like they're continuing to do these ports, upgrade them so they can handle more grain. Is there any use of doing that if we can't get the grain there?
If we ever get the grain there, the upgrades that they're doing at Pacific, they had to do. It was a condition of their ability to get a lease with the Port of Vancouver in order to keep that terminal open. That terminal was literally falling down around people. They regularly had to run pumps out of their basements because the inlet was actually seeping through the floor and soaking up the basement. So there was a lot of work that needed to be done at Pacific. Cargill is doing an automation that's actually going to cost us at the end of the day when it's finished, and I believe it's scheduled to be finished in December of this year. It's actually going to cost our membership 10 jobs. Richardson's upgrade, because they're adding storage space, they're adding rail space and dumper capacity, is going to give us, I believe it's 7 more jobs. So at the end of the day, is it going to be worth it? For those facilities, yes, it's going to be worth it. Is it going to increase the port's ability to do more grain? I don't know, you'd have to ask the company executives.
What is your, on your end, we've got the grain here, you've got the room and the capability of handling it. What would your solution be to solve this problem we have at this time?
I really believe that it's a logistics problem. I believe that a lot of the costs, if the numbers that the gentleman said earlier, somewhere in 50 to 75 million in demurrage charges are going to be real, then I truly believe that a logistics person or a logistics team is vitally important. I know that Viterra has a huge logistics team, but I also know that the guy who loads trucks for them has to turn away trucks because they haven't got pellets, right? Like the people the people they've got working for them in the Port of Vancouver don't understand the grain industry. They think that trucks in particular, they think that you just order 10 trucks of 40 tons each for pellets and they show up under a spout and 40 tons of pellets magically appear. They don't realize that you've got to have the time to make the pellets. So we're regularly sending trucks back to Washington State or Oregon empty because we don't have any pellets. And that's the simplicity of the logistics I'm talking about, right? They ordered, Viterra told us back in October that their program was that they were not going to order any grain from a country facility unless the vessel was already waiting. Well, if you're trying to get 60,000 tons for a vessel that's already sitting in the harbor, you're paying for that vessel to sit there for a long, long time. So our opinion is that somebody needs to coordinate that you can have vessels, and there needs to be a grain sharing or a volume handling or grain handling agreement amongst the companies. You can't have a vessel come in at a cost of $10,000 a shift and have it come in 3 or 4 times to one facility and sit at harbor for 6 or 7 days in between each shift and expect that to be an economical way of doing business. It just doesn't make sense to me. And I've got a grade 10 education and worked on the waterfront my whole life. So.
How many rail cars does it take to finish lake vessels?
Lots.
It's a question.
Yeah, no, I was sitting there trying to do them.
180 cars, a lot. I won't even go close to 21.
No.
600 cars.
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking 100,000, you got fill up
So they
60.
they won't ship the grain from.
That's what they told us. That's what they told us. They will not order grain from the country until the vessel is leased and either there or very close to being there.
Well, I think we're trying to solve a looming problem if that's the case. We're not going to solve this if I take over time.
Well, that's Viterra's opinion. You know, the rest of them have their own logistics.
Viterra or Cargill?
It was Viterra. Yeah. So.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll take one more question.
I guess I'm a lucky fellow. Humphrey Bannock, I'm the Vice President of the Canadian Federation of Agriculture. Pleased to be here today. I farm near Kamloops, Alberta. I'm having just as much trouble delivering as people in Saskatchewan are. I was at Hunter Harrison's presentation yesterday, and that's where the information came from. He did say that they will not be putting any more resources from CP. They feel that they can reuse the resources they have in a more beneficial way to get cars out there. And he did bring up the point. He said when asked the question about grain deliveries, he was the one that said that they delivered 200 cars into a terminal. They'll sit there until Tuesday morning when they get them loaded. So that was his way of passing the buck. And as you said, the workers are ready to go. The grain companies are ready to step forward and load those cars and get them turned around. You mentioned logistics, Steve, and I think that's a big part of where the study that Pulse Canada is going to get to is we need more logistics across the prairies. It's how to manage this stuff in and out of our ports. So that's an important part. It's going to take lots of work. I know that we're going to work with CFA when they're in Ottawa next week to talk to the ministers we have. I know Alberta Federation of Agriculture, Lynn Jacobs and I are going to meet with some of our Alberta MPs and bring up the same process there. So I would expect a blitz in Ottawa next week when we're down there talking to our MPs across Western Canada about this.
Just on that, I know that under the wheat board, and I'm not here as a proponent of the wheat board, I personally couldn't care less one way or the other. It has no direct effect on us, other than the fact that the wheat board was a 12-month program that kept us employed and it gave us some sort of job security. But with the screw ups that the railways are having, apparently we've got jobs for the next 18 months. So I'm happy either way. But under the wheat board, a car would be destined to Vancouver or Prince Rupert. So you would have trains coming and the designation would either be Vancouver or Prince Rupert. Now you have cars destined for Richardson's, Cargill, Cascadia, Pacific, Alliance. The railway has to split those cars up in order to deliver them. And they're not going to deliver them unless they've got a full spot delivery. So a small place like Alliance could wait 2-3 days for them to develop a train big enough to bring to Alliance. Richardson's has a similar problem taking it across the bridge into the North Shore through the CN lines. Those are all logistics that need to be worked out, right? If you were just bringing it in, it was grain being sold and purchased, send it off. You know, somebody was asking me a question earlier about Prince Rupert Grain having 3 different owners, plus the Alberta Heritage Fund, plus they do, you know, a little bit of wheat board stuff and a little bit of stuff for Dreyfus, right? You know, if they've got a Cargill vessel or a Viterra vessel sitting at the dock and they're 3,000 tons short of Cargill grain, they're not kicking that vessel out for 3,000 tons. If they got 3,000 tons of Richardson's grain, I'm guaranteeing you it's going on that boat and they're going to do a paper shuffle in the background. That's the way it should be. Grain in the facility should just go on a boat. Grain in the harbor should just go on a boat. Let somebody else, either here or in Regina or Winnipeg, let them figure out who gets the bill and who gets the cost. Getting the grain on a boat faster has got to be our highest priority.